I'm going to attempt to do this properly. So, my name is Alex, and I'm a designer and entrepreneur. I'm usually kind of trying to wear many hats at the same time, which is a problem, of course. But I do two things, one of which is run a design consultancy called DesignswarmSpeaker. I'm also the founder of a new product company called the Goodnight Lamp. And I'm part of a design partnership called RIG. So you can all go through that. I'm not going to talk about any of that today. I'm going to try to explore what we mean when we talk about relationships between robots and humans, because we're making them, in a way. I'm going to use a lot of the inspiration from some people I got involved with a few years ago called LIREC. And LIREC is an EU-funded research project on robots and emotions. And it's very much about exploring the relationship that we have with robots when we design them, when they enter our lives in our daily living, and how we react to them, what makes a good relationship or what makes a bad relationship. So in this talk, I guess, I will try to talk about two things. One of which is, what are we doing with robots now? How are we developing them now? And what's the kind of cutting edge of how we're thinking about things? And how it's affecting us, and how perhaps we're getting closer and closer to being robots ourselves without necessarily realizing it. So the previous speakers are very much into the kind of industrial scale of robots, and industrial robots are robots that are made for efficiency and to do a better job industrially in industrial settings. There is also a category of robots that's slightly more friendly. This is EMIS, and I will talk about EMIS shortly. But we can have kind of two visions about the world of robots, one which is a little bit more anthropomorphized, has a face, has features. And the world of science fiction and Hollywood has helped us a lot in giving robots those shapes and features, because we kind of want them there. We kind of want to relate to them in some way. And also we want to be able to read them in the ways that we read other people. When I meet someone, I will look at their face first, unless they have terrible hands, but that's another story. The definition of robot by Wikipedia, and this is kind of always a constant discussion. What is a robot? What isn't a robot? How are we kind of defining that? Is one of robotics research kind of terrible questions. And one way to define it is mechanical or virtual intelligent agent. And I'm interested in the word intelligence here because it kind of assumes something about what intelligence is. And that agent can perform tasks, whether it's remote controlled or not, and done automatically or not. If you look at the definition, again, the Wikipedia page is really interesting. Definitions for human, it's a being with a very large brain, and therefore intelligence, and able to do and perform a whole bunch of social functions that we are slowly starting to develop for robots. So we're capable of abstract reasoning, language, introspection, problem solving, etc. And I get the feeling that what we're doing more and more is sharing this idea of intelligence, because actually intelligence is the thing that's the easiest thing to develop versus self-awareness, language, introspection. Those things are hard, they're difficult. So intelligence, in a way, is kind of an easy win. And because intelligence is defined very broadly, you have someone could be quite stupid, someone could be quite smart. In the same ways, robots could be quite stupid and quite smart, and you'd still call them robots. In the same way, you would still call someone who is a bit dumb a human or person. And what's now happening, especially with projects like LIREC, because LIREC is not alone, there are other EU-funded projects, is that robots are being developed to do certain things that we associate with humanity and with people. So understanding people, understanding the context that people are in, whether someone is sad or not, how they walk into a room, do they walk very fast or not. We have computing technologies that allow us to do quite a lot of analysis and gather a lot of data about someone's life and experience, and then have that robot react in certain ways. We're also developing robots that are growing old gracefully, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And robotic infrastructures, and especially in terms of software, where we're learning what's important and what's not important. So if I'm a generally happy person and my robot sees that one day I'm crying all afternoon, he will know that that's an important moment that he should remember and do something with. One of the ways in which we're developing robots in that way is that we've learned to break down what we are and to break ourselves down into components. One of those components being kind of emotional communication. So emotional communication at its simplest is emoticons. I'm bored, I'm tired, I'm happy, I'm ecstatic, oh my God. We've developed an entire language that's text-based for a whole range of feelings, a whole range of emotions that actually makes it really easy for robots to understand. This is, technology also, and in just a kind of a language that we've developed that has helped a lot in things like animation and cinema. So we've broken down the way in which a face changes in order to do cartoons better or to do animation better. So these are some of the ways in which a face could change, and the combination of those things could create complex emotions. But in a way, it's broken down into 10 pieces. This is one way in which that technology is being used inside Lyric. This is called Little Mozart, and Little Mozart is an iPad app that allows users to get a sense of whether they're building a good melody or not, because this Little Mozart will react to the music you're composing. So if you're a young child, say 7 years old, and you're learning how to play music, if you're doing, you're not doing so well, or you could change something, the face of the character will change. In the same way that a teacher would perhaps react enthusiastically or try to support you in a specific way, Little Mozart was kind of designed with that thinking. But if you kind of dig into the computer science side of it and how emotions are actually being broken down, this is how you end up analyzing emotion and emotional state. So if the sum of positive emotions is bigger than the sum of the negative emotions over the last n time period, then the agent is in a good mood or a bad mood. This is a person, this is not an agent. But it's convenient to talk in those terms because it helps us break down more and more and more what makes us human, what makes us tick. So whether it's a user, which is a term that the web likes a lot, which is also a term that only really gets used in drug consumption, a user, then an agent is a preferred term in robotics. So all that's kind of going on. People are using these breakdowns in our emotional state in order to analyze how we react, how we could potentially react to systems and infrastructures. What starts to happen really interestingly is that we're starting to mirror relationships. So this is EMIS. EMIS is a robotic head that basically has emotions. So it uses its pieces of face in order to express emotion and to communicate its state with the user. We went to CeBIT, and CeBIT is a big fair in Hanover, I'm sure you all know it, and presented EMIS. And the easiest, I guess, demo that you could build for EMIS is to try to get EMIS to replicate your face. So this looked like this, where we had someone sitting in front of EMIS, and a camera was looking at the person's face and trying to replicate that person's face. So this is what the robot sees. So it's breaking down the face into its basic components dynamically in real time, and then trying to match it to the infrastructure it has, which is just those pieces. Which basically means, because we were showing this off for 5 days, and it's very long 5 days, you're kind of constantly smiling in a way that adapts to the biggest change in these elements. So you're adapting your face as a person to what you know will make the robot react. So we ended up smiling like this for a really long time. Huge features, and creating as much of a difference in our face as we possibly could, because subtleties were completely lost. And also, the robot doesn't have enough elements to actually replicate everything your face is doing at any given time. So after 4 days, the kind of, my face was all tense because I'd been smiling too much at the robots. So that kind of led me to think, okay, well, if, this is happening in the case of a demo, an academic robotics research demo that has no bearing necessarily on what's happening on industry, or does it? And if you think to the way in which your everyday life is being managed and your humanity is being managed online, actually it is being quite robotic. So Facebook privacy features are incredibly complex, but at the same time are requiring you to make yes and no decisions about things. They're requiring you to be very binary and very digital about what makes you human. And we have a tendency to try to look at things and try to see the humanity in things all the time. So this is a group on Flickr called Hello Little Fella, which is basically whenever something looks like a face, you kind of post it on Flickr. And I find it both amazing because in a way that is us doing facial recognition constantly because that's what we're best at doing. We always try to find faces. But in a way that's also what the machines are doing. I've lost a slide. Oh well. The other product that's out there is called the Human Player, which is a Japanese toy, and it's a Japanese toy that psychoanalyzes you. So it asks you 50 questions about yourself, and then creates a character on this little game that plays and just kind of goes along and does things. I don't know how to speak Japanese. I got this thing, I just kind of randomly pressed a bunch of buttons and ended up with a character that reads a lot. I have no idea what's going on. But it thinks it knows me based on very binary decisions I've made, even if they're completely wrong. So I think it's very interesting to look at robotics research now because in a way, everything is being played out before our eyes. Robotics and the kind of idea of robots taking over the world is very far away from us, simply at the moment for reasons related to energy. Battery life of a robot is a horrible thing to manage and to design for. But there's also so much going on that forces us to become more and more robotic. So this is another piece of software that was developed in Lyrac, which is an emotion tracker. And what it does, it just looks at basic features of your face and tries to infer emotion. So if I hold a certain position for a while, it will say, oh, that person looks unhappy or looks sad, etc. And because my particular face, my mouth is quite small compared to the ratio with my eyes, even when I was smiling, it was saying that I was ambivalent because it couldn't quite read my face. And in a way that's, quite nice, but if this type of technology is being used in airports and people are using this in order to scan whether people are terrorists or not or look nervous or not, etc., they wouldn't see anything with my face, so I'd be called up for security searches all the time, hypothetically. And it also requires us to think about the interaction when this becomes a private product. So if I have a robot at home, he needs to learn about my face. He needs to be able to analyze my face and understand my face alone. So if a guest comes in or I've lent my keys to someone and they walk into my apartment and they suddenly don't recognize my face, do they call the police? Because I haven't pre-registered that robot with this person. It becomes a whole kind of different relationship to manage. And if what we're doing is basically giving a robotic view of the world to infrastructure and to people. This is an excellent video, by the way, called Robot Readable World by Timo Arnal, who works at Berg, where all he's collected is CCTV footage where people are being tracked or infrastructure is being tracked, and it's brilliant. But I think, in a way, that's what we've made them do. That's what we've made them look for. And the confusion between the fact that they're seeing one person but they're not seeing the other person is also interesting in the system, where we can't be accurate all the time, in the same way that I look in a crowd and I'll see someone and think, oh, that's my friend, because they have their back to me, and then they turn around and I go, oh, no. And those are all quite human capabilities, but we require so much efficiency from robots and robotic systems that perhaps isn't, you know, what we should expect. And I think the way in which robots might look at a space and analyze a space, 12 seconds, is in a way, we're kind of being forced to do that. We're kind of being forced to look at the world in a very binary way. And the biggest example of this is QR codes. QR codes aren't for us. They're for our cell phones. The audience for that mode of communication is not me and my brain, it's my phone. And this has been around for quite some time. Now we're kind of, you know, to get the Wi-Fi password, I had to scan a barcode and la la la, and suddenly all that infrastructure that used to be quite human readable is now only device readable. And can you think of perhaps in 5 years' time when people might look at these and say, actually, I kind of know what, you know, this QR code is pointing to, because it's been in my life for so long, I understand the language of QR codes. This, by the way, is a collection of codes that was collected in 2006. So that we've been thinking about this space for quite some time. So it's the difference between having someone wearing a t-shirt, this is also at CeBIT, someone wearing a t-shirt with a QR code you almost can't scan because it's on their back, and do you really want to tell them to stand still and pull the t-shirt so you can take a decent picture? With something like code maps, which is a small project of mine, which would be machine readable, but is also just a pointer to a map that you could probably guess already. So human readable. So if you pointed this to your phone, and your phone would go, okay, yep, I'm going to look this up on Google Maps, the basic shape, I will find the basic shape, and I will find the address. But if I knew the neighborhood enough, or if I knew that part of town enough, I could probably guess. I wouldn't need to use my phone. And that's, you know, more human readable. I'm not going to talk about that because I've run out of time. So I think robots are an interesting way in which we're defining our humanity, but we're also defining them and letting them define us in return. And robotics research is also, you know, incredibly worried about the fact that all these things are still mainly unsolvable in terms of robotics research. Introspection, problem solving, self-awareness, rationality are things that we are not able to build into robots right now. Even if Hollywood sells it to us, it's still very, very difficult. And that is our domain, and that is something that we're identifying as our domain, as something that we're quite good at, and they're not quite. And also because if everything was solvable and every single problem was solvable, we wouldn't be doing crossword puzzles. We would just point our camera at the crossword puzzle and just let it solve itself. And where would, you know, what's the fun in that, really? And I think that, you know, eventually what we have to decide is whether we're designing for us or them, but maybe that doesn't matter anymore. Maybe there's no difference anymore. And we're becoming more and more just looking at ourselves evolve through them. And something to keep in mind as well, because all of this is highly speculative and highly philosophical, but also a lot of robotics research is exploring the unexplored and is really trying to figure out things that haven't been figured out yet. And I think that's really brave, and it's an area of research that we should keep investing in regardless. Thank you very much.